welcome to the channel. I'm Summer. Today we are doing some fun short layers in our haircut today. We are taking a previous mannequin that I've done 2 previous cuts on actually, and we're really shortening it up, adding much more movement and layers to it, and I will be explaining just why we are doing that and the difference between both cuts. Let's get started. All right, before we start actually cutting, I wanna show you this haircut before we start cutting it. This mannequin, I've done 2 previous haircuts on, I'll link them below in the description, that was more geared towards fine hair and adding layers, but where you keep a lot of weight and dimension. So I just wanna show you what it looks like dry. It's got movement, it's got layers, but we have so much weight and thickness that's left in here, which is great, but this cut I'm doing today is gonna be geared more towards somebody who has like tons and tons of hair that's like, get this weight out of my hair. So we are gonna be adding way more layers. We're gonna really be cutting into this back to remove that bulk, still keeping it where the perimeter looks nice and full. We're not gonna create like any holes today. And we're also gonna be doing much heavier of a face frame to really cut into this and add a little bit more swooping shape everywhere. So I just wanted to explain that first. So I'm gonna get her wet down and then we're gonna get to cutting. All right, so I've got her sectioned off front to back, and we're gonna be starting off in the back today to create our layers. So on this mannequin, when I did the last haircut on her, I really focused on skimming just these outer layers. We were really bringing everything out and twisting, which we're going to be still doing today, but we're gonna be cutting much more into all of this hair. So what I like to do is first, I'm gonna take my main section to set my guide in the middle, and I just push the hair over. You could opt to clip it out of the way if you want, but if the hair is nice and damp, it usually stays out of your way. So now that we have done that, what I do, I usually always just start my layers from the bottom. Some people like to start from the top to set their guide, but I find this way lines up fine, especially for when you're creating those shorter layers. We're gonna grab this hair, fine side of the comb, and we're gonna come all the way out, and you just barely are letting that perimeter fall. So I know I'm not cutting any of that perimeter, and I've got much more hair to cut, whereas the last haircut, we would be sliding this all the way out, and we wouldn't be removing the amount of length that we are now. So coming out, my perimeter is dropped. I've got this hair, cut. And then you're just working your way up. I always like to do rounded layers, mostly for my short layers, and you just continue to follow your guide. Now, this doesn't seem like we're taking as much off because I already had created layers from the previous cuts, but we're still removing actually a good amount more. I mean, that's a solid, I'd say, inch, which makes a huge, huge difference when creating layers and shape in the hair. Like the slightest bit can make all the difference in the world for somebody. Whether you, like, especially if you have thin, fine hair, taking too much can really be detrimental. But then if you're somebody with lots of hair, taking enough is like all the difference in the world. Like an inch, you can be like, oh, so much lighter, feels so much thinner, you get more shape and movement. So typically what somebody with thick hair wants isn't always what somebody with fine, thin hair wants. And then if you're anything like me, you're constantly wishing you had more hair. So I've moved into my next section here, and I'm gonna do the same thing. So I've got the fine side of my comb here. We're coming out. That perimeter has fallen. I see my guide and cut. And we're just rounding with the head. And then what you're gonna do, take a little bit from your guide, push that hair over out of the way, and then a little bit from your next section. So this is a traveling guide. We've moved now from the center of the head into this corner. That way you're gonna get ample movement. And anytime with any sort of layering you're doing, you want to always make sure that you are taking proper sections, because that's what's going to allow you to keep your layers even. You're not going to have one piece where they're like so much shorter than the other side or longer. Always take nice even sections. So we're coming back, splitting my previous guide in half. I already took my hair from this section. See my guide? Cut. And now this last section at the ear, if you watch my channel, you know I always extend this back just to preserve a little bit more length. And we'll have just this little bit up top, rounding it out. And just that little baby hair. So now that we've done our one side, what we're gonna do is comb this hair down, come back towards that middle area. And actually, before I cut, I'm gonna see. So I'm gonna show you a difference in the layers. It's wet, so it's hard to tell. But these are our new lengths that we've cut for our top layer. You've got quite a bit of difference here. Where before, where they were more of that surface layer, look how much longer they remained. You have a lot more length here and a lot more weight left, which was great for what we wanted. But for this type of hair, somebody who has lots of hair, they want to take out a lot of weight, they want to see more movement, you want to cut the layers how we did on this side. And I will link below the video that I did the previous two haircuts on this mannequin so you guys can see if you haven't already seen that. So coming back to our original area here where we took our first guide. Fine side of my comb. I can see my guide through here, cut. And another key thing about taking nice even sections is that you can always see your guide. If you take too big of section, not only are you gonna get more unevenness with your layers, but you're not gonna see your guide, meaning you're more likely to take too much or not enough because you cannot see through to the guide. I would be willing to bet that most people who have had bad haircuts where their layers were all messed up is because the stylist, or maybe you on your own at home if you're cutting, you're not taking proper sections. You're moving too fast, you're being impatient, you're just trying to get it done. Slow and steady always wins the race. I'm trying to make sure you guys can see this. Fine side of the comb and just repeat the same steps. Come out, let that perimeter fall. I see my guide, cut. I'm over directing this corner piece back to make sure I extend that length and don't get like a little hole. It's always in that ear region that you can get the hole. Perfect. So I'm gonna check through her. One thing, this would not be a problem in real life. Her head was twisting because these are shoulder attachments. So I'm gonna make sure back through here matches up on this side because her head was twisted and I did not realize it. So I'm just gonna check that really quick. Like I said, that wouldn't be a problem. Your real life client would not be having her head twist off of her shoulders. Yeah, I have just a little extra length. Okay, so you would check the hair actually the same way that I was doing that. I just come in and I take bigger sections because you've already cut, and you just will glide through, see how it's lining up. If you notice any hairs are sticking out, there's a little bit right there, just cut them. You don't have to take quite as precise sections when you are checking because you've already cut out so much of that weight. And I'll just come over here even though I just did it and check again. Everything is looking good. And then what you could also do is come straight across the back. You guys have seen me do this too. So you would just come straight across that very top layer and you're just gonna comb it up. And we have just this tiny little guy sticking out here. And then what I would do is drop that back down and then just come through this top and see where it is, just barely right in there. All right. So I'm gonna spritz her back down. And now we're gonna move into the sides. The reason I respray this is to keep the hair nice and damp, so that way you're getting even tension with the hair anywhere you grab it. This hair was already dry, so it's not gonna pull out the same with my comb as this hair is because it's more wet and damp. So that is why you always wanna make sure that the hair is saturated nicely with water. You don't want one area that's more dry than the other. So we're gonna come in and create these side layers. I am going to only do it up until about this point because this is gonna be our face frame and that's gonna get cut differently anyways. But you would just move in through your sides, same as you did in the back. Take a little bit at a time. And I always extend it and over direct it back. I just like doing this because the sides can get, even with somebody with a lot of hair, the sides are always thinner than the back. So I like to preserve a little extra weight and length, and I can always go in and remove more once the hair is dry. And it's mostly on this top layer. And as I'm moving to the top, I am twisting still a little bit. I always typically am twisting my fingers. I'm sure if you are familiar with my channel, that is not new to you. I'm just coming, bringing it back. We're twisting. We've got way more hair here now to cut. And I'm gonna leave the rest now until we start our face frame, and I'm gonna repeat on the other side. I'm gonna grab this hair, over direct back, twisting. This first piece, there's not as much to cut. As I move through the top, I'm still twisting. Again, I'm leaving out this front hair. Next section. We're directing back. We've got more hair to cut now. Okay, so now we're gonna create the face frame, which is always my favorite part. I love a good face frame. So this was left quite long and slightly a bit of a disconnect. You can see how it's shorter here and then it drops off a little bit more significant. And that was again because we're trying to maintain the most weight and thickness through the sides while still creating some movement. We're gonna be cutting into this quite a bit more. So you're gonna get really a nice thicker swoop because this client has the hair for it. They wanna remove all that bulk and nice thick hair that they have that us like finer, thinner hair girls wanna cling to. So I'm just gonna separate this hair. I'm just doing right at the ear. This is all getting combed back. We're not gonna touch any of this for a while. And I'm just gonna put a clip here so I don't accidentally grab any of it. And do the same on the other side. Okay, so I'm gonna actually use the shortest piece as my guide already and just cut into it more to create more shape. So I need this to be removed. It's this like longer length here. We wanna really open up the face. You see more of that cheekbone. You're gonna get a bit more of a defined swoop than what we had before. So I'm still gonna come in and take small sections. You can push this back if you want. And our guide has already been set for us because that's just what I'm going with. And what we're gonna do is I'm using the wide teeth of my comb. This is because I don't wanna pull like too crazy tight in the front, just because the front can shrink up a little bit more. You usually wanna have more wiggle room for after you get it dried if you need to remove more length. It's a little less forgiving than the back. So I can see my guide here, and all I'm going to do is I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna come straight down into this. What that's going to do, I need to turn her, sorry about that. So I'm gonna come in and come straight down into this. Last week, I directed this across the face and would slide down. And that was what allowed me to keep this weight and length. But because we wanna remove it, you are going to cut into it more. Remember, the more you directly cut into something, the more length and weight you're going to be removing. So you wanna keep that in mind for somebody with like thick hair that wants more weight removed versus somebody with fine, thinner hair who does not. So I'm coming in, I see my guide here, and we're just gonna come in and sliver straight down. And look at how much more length and weight that took out. And I'm actually gonna clean this up a tiny bit more. It's just right in here. I can see how much shorter it is right there. So I'm just gonna take my scissors from the bottom here, because I can see my point that I'm trying to connect it to. And that just removed a little bit more length. I'm gonna take my next section and we're just gonna continue that same pattern. So we're combing the hair forward. I'm coming down now to my next guide, so further down on the head. Sliver straight down. And then what you can do is check that, bring it down. I have a little bit of length right here I need to clean up. And it's that easy. Always take sections. That is the biggest, most important thing. Especially when somebody has thicker hair, like what is the intended look of this? If you were to take all of this in one length, you're just gonna have to keep going back through it over and over, where when you break it up, you just get a nice, cleaner cut. There's less room that you're gonna have to, you know, go back in and fix afterwards and post. And your client will be more appreciative, okay? Like they'll be more happy that you took the time to do this rather than rush through. So again, we're combing straight down. I can see my previous guide here, and at this point, rather than sliver, I keep angling her too much. So rather than sliver into this, I'm just gonna comb straight up to this point here. There's my guide. I'm coming at the bottom length. There we go. And then we've got just our very last section here. We have just like a little tiny bit of hair, not a lot. So I'm gonna repeat the same on this other side, and then I'm gonna show you how I like to go in and do a little bit of the layering. But look at the difference. Neither one is like the wrong or right way to do it. It all just depends on the client, but you can see we have a lot more length left here. You're gonna get less of a swoop, there's less movement. This is gonna have so much more movement when we go to dry it. You're gonna see a lot more swoop and bend. And then again, if this was somebody who had so much hair, they're gonna prefer that they have a lot less hair here to work with. They're gonna get more movement, and a lot of that weight has been removed. So again, take our first section here, comb this back. So I typically, when I'm on the other side of the head, I opt to just cut from the bottom up. It's harder to swoop, or to sliver in, I should say, when you're on the other side of the head. So I'm just gonna bring my fingers down. I see my point here, and we're just gonna cut from the bottom. I've got my scissors are twisted, cut. And then we're gonna take our next section. Same thing, come from the bottom, shears are twisted, cut. We met up into this point right at the top. Just this last little hair right in here. We're gonna let that fall, and then what you'll do is check. This is the hardest part when doing the face frame, is making sure that they line up, which is also why you wanna take small sections. We're just gonna grab some pieces of hair here, see how they're lining up. If one side needs to be cut, usually my opposite side, I need to always go back in, and that's just because of your body position. So if you don't get it completely perfect the very first time, that's okay. We've got just a little bit of hair here to cut. Perfect. So now what I like to do is to create a little bit more layer and to check sort of my face frame. I come in. Okay, so what I will do is I come in and I take the section a little bit at a time. You can see here, it's like quarter, half an inch. And what we're gonna do is we are gonna bring this all the way up and over. And you're just gonna cut out the hair that's sticking there. This seems crazy, but it works. Next section, all the way up, over, these little hairs, cut them. And you're gonna do that all the way to the very front of the face. Usually there's not as much in that very last section. And then you're gonna repeat on the same side, the same steps on the opposite side of the head. And what I find that this does is it just adds a little bit of layers, and it also helps to even everything out perfectly. I started doing this, I don't even know at what point in my career, when I did my face frame, and it never failed me. So you're going all the way up and all the way over and cut. And then the last step you're going to do for checking your face frame, and this also helps to add a little bit more layering, is you're gonna go from your back section and you're gonna bring it completely forward, fine side of your comb this time, over the face, twisting, and just cut those little pieces. And you're gonna do that all the way till you get to the front. Across the face, twisting. I'll over direct it up some. And repeat on the other side. So we're coming forward, across the face, twisting, cut. Bring it up a little higher, cut. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and get her blown out. I'm gonna spritz her back down first, and the reason for that is I want the hair to be nice and damp so I can really manipulate it into the style that I want. And I think I'm actually gonna show you guys a little bit of the blow drying today, which I typically don't do, but I get quite a good amount of comments asking for me to show the blow dry some, so I will go ahead and do that for you guys today. So I'm gonna use a little bit of Moroccan Oil's smoothing lotion, as well as Redken's Oil for All. This is ideal for coarser hair types that want that smooth, sleek style. We're also gonna be able to get some nice bend in the hair, and I'm just gonna apply that all throughout the hair. And then once you get your products through, you wanna go through and comb the hair. This is gonna help evenly distribute the products all through the hair so you get nice even coating everywhere. And then we're gonna do a little bit of a rough dry with our Lathan Swift hair dryer, and I'll leave all these products linked below in the description. And you don't wanna rough dry the hair any more than typically 2 minutes tops. Once the hair has been rough dried, you're gonna wanna break it up into 3 to 4 sections just using your clips. This is gonna allow you to get max control when creating the shape that you want with your blow dry, especially if you are wanting to get a lot of bend in the hair. All right, and then for our blow dry, we're using Cricut's 390 brush. This is gonna help give us some nice bend and movement in the hair, and it matches more so the mannequin's length. If you had longer hair, you could opt to use a bigger brush, but typically you want to, when you are creating the roundness in the hair, if you want that bend, you wanna be able to roll the brush into the hair at least 1 full turn, maybe even like a turn and a half, but when you get to the end, you wanna be able to completely roll them up to the scalp. So this is 1 full turn, so we're gonna get a really nice bend. And then what you wanna do is you wanna work your dryer both top and bottom of the section if possible. That's gonna create the most amount of movement in the hair when you're shaping it. And it also helps to dry the hair a little bit more evenly, working both sides with your dryer. And then another thing I like to do, I like to just roll the ends of the hair in the brush at that final section to cool a little bit before letting them out, and you get a nice good swoop. And you're just gonna repeat those same steps throughout the rest of the blow dry. When I get to the top sections, I like to blow dry the hair just back in a mohawk shape, and I blow everything back away from the face, And then when we get to the bangs, I will show you just how I ever so slightly tweak the blow dry. Okay, so now that we are to the bangs, what I like to do when blow drying the bangs, I will take my brush and I place the hair in, and I'm gonna come at it from the opposite side of the head, twisting and blow drying it back. And then as you let it out, it'll swoop back nice. And you would do the same on the other side. You would either stand on the other side of the head or bring your dryer, pull across the face, and then you'll swoop out. So that way you get the good swoop, and it also helps if somebody has a cowlick. So that's all I'm gonna do for the bangs, and then we will be done with the blow dry. Beautiful. Okay, got my hair blown out a little bit myself. So we have a much heavier bang, if I can get in there, and a lot more swoop everywhere. I love it. So typically with thicker, coarse hair types, you definitely need to come in and texturize some. Look at all those layers. Oh, I would kill for this hair. I say that like every haircut, but I truly mean it. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of feel through, see how it's lining up. Sometimes in the top layer, we need to take a little bit more. This doesn't need it quite as much just because she's been through some haircuts already. But just to show you guys, I take my texturizing shears, Shark Fin's the brand that I use, and I just come through, and I like to just do it here in this middle region. She probably could stand to have it some, just to soften it up. And just do it lightly on the ends. I don't want to do anything too close to the root. That's going to get the grow out to be really weird. Unless somebody says like thin it all out, like go at it, you know, you always want to stick to the ends. But you would just come through in the points and areas that need it, and just lightly, I call it like a point cutting thinning, where you're just doing those ends and you're kind of coming in. You're not doing anything hard. But you would just feel through the cut. This came out beautiful. You've got a lot more movement than how it was before. And I'm gonna get her hair sprayed, set into place, and we'll get you guys out of here. All right, here we have our finished and final look. I am so obsessed with how it came out. I never get over layers upon layers and layers. We have beautiful layers all throughout the head, in the back. There's nice movement everywhere. We removed so much more of that bulk and thickness for somebody who likes to get rid of some of their thick hair. And then through the sides and face frame, everything looks so lovely. I hope you enjoyed today's haircut tutorial, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.